Hello there, everyone. We are back in San Diego with another one of our prep videos. This time around, we're talking about autographs, signatures. We know a very exciting thing and popular thing for a lot of attendees. This is actually a video we've never done before, kind of like the beginner's guide this year. We've tried to listen to what people are asking for and do a little bit better job of addressing some of those. And so this is an area people have asked for a while. So we're going to give it a shot. Hopefully there's something useful in here. And if not, we'll try it again maybe next year if we have time. But talking about our autographs, first I want to point out, to find the list of all the signatures going on, head over to our friends at the unofficial San Diego Comic-Con blog. They are compiling that list. They put it together. Our friend Johnny over there does an incredible job. I mean, his nonstop work of finding all these different signings from all over the convention and compiling them in a place to check out. I know I always go and look at it as we come into the convention time, and so highly suggest you checking it out as well. Now, before we get into some of the specifics of some of these different types of signatures, we're going to talk about various different signings at Comic-Con and kind of how they work. I did want to talk real quick about just like philosophies with it, because like autographs are one of those things to some people are not important at all. Like, for example, for us, Carmel, my wife, does not like, she's not into them at all. She doesn't see any value in them. For me, I grew up, like, my very first convention was getting, you know, an autograph from John Delancey and Shell Nichols and various Trek actors. And so I grew up, like, autographs have always been really big to me. So for me, leaving a con without a signature kind of feels weird. Like, it feels like it's just part of what I'm there to do. So for me, it's a big deal. That said, also for me, I am not big on investing time into lotteries, generally speaking. And we'll talk about that as we kind of go through the different types of options here. I really don't like the idea of investing time and not being assured of getting something. So you'll see kind of some of my prejudice in terms of like directions I'll go with autographs at San Diego Comic-Con. It is important to note that there are a lot of different ways that autographs work at San Diego Comic-Con. I was surprised myself when I went through and thought and looked at kind of subcategories within categories, and we'll go through there. But there are a lot of options. It's part of what makes San Diego Comic-Con sometimes challenging for new attendees, because most conventions, like for example, if you're going to LA Comic-Con, you want to get Ewan McGregor's signature, you see he's there, you buy a ticket for his autograph, done, end of story. Here, there's so many different places. A lot of the signatures are sponsored by various booths and things like that, and so it can be a little challenging, and so hopefully this guide will help a little bit with that. Remember that autographing can be very volatile, because unlike exclusives, which can also be volatile, autographs, you're also dealing with the talent, you're dealing with agents, managers, studios, locations. So, you know, back in the day when we got Mark Hamill's autograph, I think he showed up like 2 hours late to it. It was still one of my favorite autographing situations because he was so awesome when he got there. But I remember part of his story when he rolled in was just like they didn't realize the amount of traffic there was to get to the convention center or things like that. So there's just a lot of variables there, and you have to know that going in. For me, Mark Hamill was a must. I never would have regretted spending all that time for him. But if he was somebody maybe not quite as important to me, I might have felt a little bit differently about that. So let's look at some of these different things. So let's start out talking about sales. And I think Sales Pavilion, one thing a lot of people focus in on the like lottery option type situation there, and we'll get to that. But for me, my favorite part about sales is the older school actors that inhabit that area usually, where you just buy their autographs. And so straight up, and so there's been a lot of different people over the years, but I thought I'd bring this one just because I thought it was a fun, like old school memory. Our character Mike TV from Willy Wonka there, he would sign just for free in up there in Sales Pavilion. Not a common thing, but just want to point out, like, Sales Pavilion has rotating talent there. It's something to look at. It's a very simple, and we're going to kind of go from easiest to most difficult, at least in my opinion. And so to me, the easiest autographs to get at San Diego Comic-Con are Sales Pavilion paid autographs. You see the celebrity there. They are not going to be, you know, your top A-list, you know, Hall H people up there. They're going to be people that had shows from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, etc. They're going to be a lot easier to get in most cases. They're going to be charging 40, 50, 60 bucks, and that's kind of how they work. I do love Sales Pavilion. Actually, it's one of my earliest Comic-Con memories was just kind of checking out who was up there and really enjoying that. Now, also, though, you have your paid on the floor type autographs. So, for example, a real highlight last year to me was over at $7 a pop. Ross Marquand was there. He played our Red Skull right here. And so in 2023, Hollywood was not a big part of San Diego Comic-Con. And so the idea that he was there kind of more on the voice acting side of things, but autographing some other stuff as well. And he did this Red Skull one I thought was really cool. But $7 a pop has become a really great, solid booth to keep an eye on. They have Sean Astin this year. They have Ashley Eckstein as well. And there's a few other places on the floor that you might find that you can get autographs before pay. They're a little more competitive in that the lines are longer. I mean, someone like Eckstein's going to have a pretty long line, to be honest, but it's also because the people that they have at their booth are normally people that are much more active in Hollywood right at this minute. Carrie Fisher's another one we picked up at a booth on the floor years ago. And, you know, it's one of those situations. You go, you buy the ticket, you go get in line. So not as easy up as sales, just because they were, you know, more popular usually if they're on the actual Comic-Con exhibit floor, it feels like, but also pretty easy in that, like, I'm paying some money, I'm getting in line, all I got to do is wait, and I'm going to get up there. Also, of course, we can't forget artists. I mean, there's so many artists that are signed, and in many cases in their situations, you're buying something, you're buying a print, maybe you're paying, you know, 5, 10, 15, 20 bucks for their autograph on a comic book. There's always various artists that we hit in Artist Alley. This is a Greg Capullo print that he had, just got it signed. I mean, it's not as nice as him doing some original art piece, but for me, it's cool enough and it fits within our budget. Also relatively easy, although, yeah, there's a good line for a Greg Capullo, a big line for a Tom King, a Scott Snyder, etc. Those are all things that are, to me, on the easy side of the paradigm as we look. Not quite as easy, but on the easier side. And then we're going to cross the street to the more difficult side. Also, various booths that do signings for authors, where they may have like a poster or a book that they're signing. Sometimes they're pre-signed, or they'll have them later in the day pre-signed, but a lot of times they'll require a ticket. You head to their booth, you get a ticket, and you come back. Maybe you get a wristband and you come back at a different time of day. You have to buy the book to get the signature, or you have to buy the piece of art to get the signature, and you come back and you secure it in that way. So the easiest side of the street, all situations where you're paying for the autograph, makes sense, right? Of course, the free stuff is going to be the more expensive side. Now, on the other side there, for the free side, items like this is where it gets more challenging, but still not as challenging as yet to come. This is a situation they had with Paper Girls. You just went, you got a ticket there early, you came back, or maybe it was a wristband, whatever it was. Brian K. Vaughan, the cast of the show, was there. You get your free poster, you get your free signatures. Pretty easy, straightforward. The only real challenge was getting there right away at open. So, like, you head to the booth, you get there, you get your thing, you get out, you come back later in the day to get the signatures. So loved getting the sign there. It's the first time I was able to get Brian K. Vaughan to sign anything, so I was really excited about that. Now, on the little bit more challenging side is when we have free but lottery attached to it. And so in those cases, it's free on the floor, but lottery. So I think always, to me, a favorite is Dark Horse. They always do interesting things there. These are a couple from the last few years, though. But David Dismalchian, I mean, he was charging $50 just when we were at Amazing Las Vegas Comic Con like the month before last year. And then we came to Comic Con. But what's different about how they do it, and these ones that are kind of a lottery situation on the floor, is you're drawing, like, so in the case here, they will have you maybe grab a ball out of a bag, or they'll have an iPad and you press a button. So it's not as assured. Now, the Goon was different, where it was just like a line up and get it. So Dark Horse does both kinds of those signatures. But ones that are going to have a lottery aspect, now they do take more time than something where we just grab and go, because, like, I think in the case of this one, I got in line twice. Like, I think I got a dud the first time through, and then there was only, like, I don't know, 10 people, if I remember correctly, and I got back in line and tried again. But, like, they've had Guillermo del Toro there, and obviously that line is very competitive. And so there is a decision of, like, if it's going to take me 30 minutes to get to the front of it for a lottery chance, do I really want to do it? I'm not so sure, but it is something I can weigh in there. But, you know, again, we're getting to the more difficult, from the easiest: paying in sales, paying on the floor, free with no risk, free now with risk in terms of a lottery. And now we'll come to talking about the sales lottery. And so the sales lottery, I'm going to read the exact words from Comic-Con International here, because it's the area that, to be honest, for me is like my least favorite area to go into, because it's taking a bunch of time, in my opinion, and I don't have anything certain there. When we get to the next lottery side, the idea of the exclusives portal, that we're able to do something at home. We've got allocations, we're making a decision, but we're not investing like physical time at Comic-Con. And if you've watched any of our videos or listened to our podcasts, you know, like, a thing we really harp on is that there's no more important currency at San Diego Comic-Con than time. So the exact wording for the sales lottery: the autograph area is located on the second floor in the sales pavilion of the San Diego Convention Center. For limited signings that take place in the autograph area, so that's the key word, the limited signing, each attendee must have a winning line ticket to enter the queue for the signing. Attendees are encouraged to begin to line up when the doors to Comic-Con open around 7 a.m. In the sales pavilion for the signings that day. Around 9 a.m., the box of decision will be used to see if the attendees win a line ticket for the limited signing they want. So box of decision, that is where, again, it's a randomization there. But that, like when I've done them at Dark Horse or a variety of other booths over the years, those have been investments of like, I don't know, a minute to 5 minutes to try to win. This, we're talking potentially hours in some cases. Now, sometimes less. Like if you go to WonderCon, there are softer opportunities sometimes there in San Diego. May have some of that this year. I mean, you never know going into it, but it normally requires more of a commitment there. Now, then we have the last, which is probably the most difficult to win, which is the portals, which as we're recording this, we are in the window where people are going into the portal online with their member ID and they're deciding for their tokens. Do they want to put it towards exclusives, signings, you know, and looking at trying to really evaluate all of that. And so there are places like Mattel, for example, is in it. Now, in the days before the portal, this was something, Batman Animated Series, I mean, getting Paul Dini and this crew, Kevin Conroy, to sign, this was as simple as just knowing to go to the Mattel booth and getting a ticket and coming back. So it actually behaved more like the Paper Girl signing, but I'm using it here as an example. So like this year, there's a Masters of the Universe one. Melody Britt's there. That's the original voice of She-Ra. I have debated buying her autograph many times in the last couple years, but she's like, I don't know, $60 to $80 now. And every time I'm like, I'll get her next time. But like, I'm tempted to put tokens towards that because it's like, well, I could get her for free. And normally in these cases, when we're talking about booths sponsoring them, when they're not the paid ones, what you're getting is something for the convention itself, something that's a little more specific. So like this was given at the Mattel booth. And so by winning one of those lotteries, you're not going to bring in your own 8x10. You're not going to bring in your own poster from Batman the Animated Series, or in the case of Masters, some, you know, Master of the Universe thing or a She-Ra thing. You're going to take what they give you. But the trade-off there, even though you may have something you really want to get them signed, is it's neat because like this one's for a virtual reality experience that was coming in the fall of 2016. It's everything about it is San Diego Comic-Con. It brings a lot of great memories. Now, in the lottery also, though, you have a lot of times bigger ones. Like I know the Planet of the Apes one is one that's very attractive to me, a big Hollywood movie, and having them here. This one Carmel got years ago. You see way back in 2010, so this was before that portal, but it's in that same type of vein. This was back when Marvel did lotteries at the booth, and she won the golden ticket to get Jon Favreau to sign this Iron Man Stark Industries poster there. But the point being, again, is like, although this last category we're talking about where you're putting tokens into the portal is the toughest to win because it's open to everybody. And what happens with the portal is people who would never have lined up for something are willing to throw some tokens in. And so they may say, you know, like for example, the Anne Rice Immortal Universe one is very popular. How many of the people would have entered if they had to go line up in the sales pavilion at 4 in the morning or things, you know, 7, things like that? Who knows? But when you just kind of log onto your computer and you decide right there, it's a lot easier to say, yeah, I'm going to throw some tokens that way. I'm going to throw all my tokens that way. And that's fine. It's just something to understand is like, I don't know that people always understand how competitive the signings are when it comes to San Diego Comic-Con. But we've won some of those over the years and have some great posters. I mean, again, when you do win those types of things, having the Comic-Con logo on them or anything about it that makes it kind of exclusive. We got a Will Wheaton one at one point from CBS or Paramount. Plus, we've got a bunch of the DC TV ones, which were great. So it's really fun and exciting to get those, but it is challenging. So again, kind of going from our easiest to our most difficult. You really start with that sales pavilion pay, and you work your way to the most difficult with that exclusive portal. Doesn't mean you shouldn't try for those ones. It's just kind of knowing as you invest time of what it is. If your sole goal is to get that signature, well, it's worth throwing all your tokens in or whatever it might be. But I would advise not to just throw like one token in to each thing because you're giving yourself such a tiny chance when other people are entering at much higher levels than that. But that said, obviously the portal, what's nice about it is like something like Funko will draw people over to that. And so people, or Hasbro, for example, this year, 100 Soft. So there's things to think about there. But in the end, we wanted to kind of go over, because I was surprised myself even looking at like the nuance to it of like taking that next level and like, what's the differences? What is going on in Sales Pavilion? What's going on the floor? What's the difference between what this people are doing and these people? And I mean, we could extend it. We're not in this guide going into offsites, but obviously there are offsite activations that have different situations with signings as well. So we hope this gives a little bit of an idea on how the signings work at San Diego Comic-Con. I know it can be a little bit confusing, or maybe a lot confusing in some cases. We hope this helps a little bit. Like I said, it's our first crack at this. We try to get better on our videos each year, but when we start something brand new, hopefully there was something in here that was helpful to you, and hopefully you have a great San Diego Comic-Con regardless of what you do in the signing area. So with that said, we are going to wrap up here, and until next time, we'll see you in line somewhere.